Hello and welcome back to Rev Endurance Sports, and today we're just going to do a quick in-process video on a new Ritchey build that I have been commissioned to do for a gentleman. We're going to call this gentleman John for the time being, but came to me through an email saying, hey, I've got a couple of bikes that I wish to cannibalize and build a Ritchey Road Logic. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you got? Well, he has an Olmo steel bike, O-L-M-O. So some of my old-time viewers will recognize the name. And then he also had a Cannondale. Now, I forget from the email, but I believe his uncle used to come to my shop many years ago. So I've been here now, I think it's 13 years. So good thing to get multi-generational business. So that's great, but you have to be in business long enough to capitalize on that. Right, so the first thing is when he brought in his his Olmo, there was really not much we could take off of that bike. We had a good saddle that I'll show you, a saddle that works for him, and honestly, I think that was it. So while he was here, we took the saddle off, and he took that bike. The next thing is he had this wonderful, and honestly, you know, a lot of times I'm on this channel and I talk a lot about the merits of steel bikes. But during a time frame that I was sponsored by Cannondale, they came out with the Super 6 Evo. And I mean, it is a great bike. So if you can get one, it's a great weight weenie bike. If you're a weight weenie, you can strip down all the paint and finish and get it down to raw carbon. And, you know, these things are really, really light. And, of course, it's a rim brake format, so you can build that bike even lighter. And I believe they're very popular in the British hill climb series or championship series. Right, so this one here, unfortunately, is too big for me because I would have purchased it from him and said, hey, let me relieve you from the challenges of putting this on eBay and trying to sell it. It's a size 63 frame, so that's going to be hard to capture because I won't be able to get that close to the camera, but it's right there if you want to zoom in. So it being a 63 frame, there was things we just could not use off of this frame for a gentleman who's going to be riding a 53. So for example, the handlebar is a 42. Well, it's labeled as a 42, but it actually measures 43.5 center to center. So the gentleman is about 5'7", 5'8", I believe, and much narrower shoulders, so we're going to go with a much narrower bar. You can see how wide this bar is for me as a 42, and in fact, I've ridden 42s for a long time, 44s even. But, so we can't use the handlebar. It's a nice alloy handlebar. But we will use the stem, and I'll show you that in a minute. So we were able to take off at least the stem to use and the 27-2 seat post from this bike over to the Ritchey. Now, it is very important to mention that this is going to be a budget build. I know that you come onto the channel and you're used to seeing Dura Ace builds, super campy builds. You're used to seeing some really high-end builds, EE brakes and all that kind of stuff. But this is more of a bike where we have the group set of the people. Yes, we do. And you'll see here in a minute. Now, also, we could not use the crankset because this is a 175 crankset, which is proportional to someone who is riding a 63 centimeter frame. So 175 crankset, can't use it. But we were able to strip off the group set, the wheels, and so we have ordered, or I have ordered, a crankset for him in a 165 millimeter. And funny thing, I just sold a 50-34 165 millimeter crankset in the FC08. So in other words, this is the Ultegra crankset for the warranty replacements of the unbonded crank arm issue. And the gentleman, I put it on back order back in August, and I just received it a couple of days ago. And now we're, I don't know, this November, it's at least the 15th or something like that. So it took, from August to November. And the gentleman asked, why is this so hard to get? And the only thing I can think of is, well, two things I can think of. One, it's a warranty replacement crankset. So it looks like a 12-speed, but it has 11-speed chain rings on it. 12-speed Ultegra is what it looks like, with 11-speed chain rings. But I just think, based on the amount of cranksets that they had out there in the Ultegra level, they just didn't have that many 165 millimeter crank sets in the public. And so what I am surmising is happening is all these people that wanted a warranty replacement or deserved a warranty replacement because the crankset did come unbonded, they were riding 170, 172.5, 175 crank arms, and now they've scaled down 1, 2, possibly 3 sizes smaller than they generally, or what they originally had. I haven't had any of these replacements, so I don't know if it's supposed to be like for like. But then the consumer who still wants an 11-speed drivetrain component crankset, they are opting for these FC08 and the 09, which is the Durace version, in a much smaller crank arm, and many are going to the 165 millimeter crank arms, and they just didn't produce as many. So I think they're behind the 8 ball, producing more and more. They didn't have the right numbers because people that bought 170 something in the past, you have this historical data and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to make just numbers here. I'm going to make 5,000 of this size, 10,000 of that size, and the 165, we're only going to make 1,000. Just numbers, of course. But just to show you the proportion, that maybe they would always make 5 times as many of the other sizes because they were more popular, and the cranksets that they delivered to OE markets, so original equipment, so manufacturers, bike manufacturers who needed to buy cranksets, many are still buying 172, 5, 170 millimeter cranksets for bike sizes, going all the way down to like a small. Maybe an extra small is coming with something smaller than 170, but that is a common thing. All right, so let's set that aside. So what we're going to build is a 53. So if you recall, the Cannondale Super 6 is a 63. This is a 53. And like I said, I believe that was his uncle's bike. Now, the other thing is that bike was very gently used. So many of the components with cleaning and whatever, it just, the finish came right back because it wasn't a bike that was abused over time. I believe it's fewer than a handful of rides on that 63 bike. So we'll start from the top here. We've got this saddle, which I don't know what exactly it is. It's a Selle Italia with a cutout. And many of you that have been watching this channel know that I'm a big SQ Lab saddle fan, but for some folks, a saddle with a cutout is what they need. So he likes a saddle. We moved it over. We moved over the Cannondale seat post. We also moved over the stem, which is a 120. Now this gentleman has a longer torso. So I said, look, let's just build it with the 120, because then, and always in an up direction as well, I need another centimeter spacer here so that we have 3 centimeters underneath, and then we have the stem in the up direction. So we're going to build it this way, and then we could always go with a smaller stem, but you can't go the other way, right? So you can't start with an 80 stem and then, oh, we should have had a 120 stem. It just, yeah. So beautiful thing about these bikes, you can swap your stem and your handlebar and all that's fine. What are we going to build it with? Well, we're going to build it with a WCS Skyline handlebar. And I really love this aluminum handlebar. It is really a great handlebar. Great price point. And, you know, for someone who's not a weight weenie, it's got a great shape, and you save 100 or so, maybe even, yeah, at least $150 off of the top end Super Logic handlebar. So we got a aluminum handlebar, aluminum stem, aluminum seat post, and his saddle. Then, as I mentioned before, this being a budget build, we are using the Shimano 105 group set on this. Mechanical rim brake, of course, rim brake. But the derailleurs, the brakes, I cleaned them up. They came up really, really clean. So they're basically new. The chain, I don't typically recommend reusing a chain if you're doing a new bike build, but it had some corrosion because it'd been sitting for a long time, and the links were all stiff, and by the time I charge him labor to clean and re-prep that chain, you know, a new chain's only $20 more, right? So if I charge him $20 to, you know, dunk his chain and get it all, a new chain's just going to be better anyway, and it's only like 20 bucks more for a new chain in the 105 version, right? The cassette is in very, very good shape, so we were able to reuse that. We've got tires on order, and we've got a Praxis 165 millimeter crankset on order as well. Again, this is more of a budget conscious build, so we went with the Zayente, which is one level below the Dune. I've been selling a lot of Dune cranksets, and they offer an incredible value. They're only $450 compared to some other really high-end stuff out there, and they're fairly light. I mean, I can't remember the numbers. I'm sorry, because I just don't worry about that stuff. And then we switched over the bottle cages and the wheels. Now the wheels are Shimano RS11. And if you're not aware of the nomenclature within the Shimano lineup, it is, obviously we have the group set wheels. So for example, a Dura Ace wheel set or an Ultegra wheel set. But RS is what they call their Road Series wheels. And these wheels are part of the OE spec of wheels. So you can get, in this case, Cannondale can get Shimano wheels, 105 group set. So now we've got Shimano, right? All the way through the bike except for the FSA crankset, because that costs more money to get the Shimano branded group crankset. And you have a set of wheels that have the same fundamental design philosophy. For example, loose ball bearing instead of cartridges, and they do that all the way up to their Dura-Ace level. They don't use cartridge bearings in their hubs. So this is great for the home mechanic. All they do is take the hub apart, clean out the wheel, clean out the races, clean the ball bearings, put it all back together with fresh grease, good to go. Obviously, if the bearings are bad, replace them, or if the races are bad, replace them. But if you stay on top of this stuff, these wheels last a very, very long time. And in fact, they are very, very smooth. So I spin them, put my hand on the fork. There's no vibrations. There's nothing, right? This is it's basically a new wheel, right? And the only noise you're hearing is just the spokes cutting through the air. It's super quiet. And the same is true for the rear. So this gentleman's going to end up with quite a fantastic bike, but not having spent a lot of money. Which brings me to my last point. So last thing before we go. I did get a text message from a long-term customer of mine. He's bought lake shoes for me. He's bought a lot of Rev Energy for me. He's even got his neighbors or his friends using Rev Energy. But I got a text from him that his neighbor wants to buy a road bike. And I asked, well, how long has he been riding? Is he new to road cycling? He says, well, yeah, he's fairly new. He rides a mountain bike for fitness, and he wants to get into road cycling. And then he's like, well, I showed him the video of rim brake versus disc brakes and all that. And I said, I responded to him via text. Oh, by the way, if anyone's wondering why this tape is here, it's because until I can get handlebars on this bike, the wheel will flop and then it'll damage, this here will damage the frame down tube. So until I can get handlebars on it and use a handlebar minder, that's why that tape is there. I know some of you are like that. You look for little things, little details like that. Anyway, so I said to the gentleman, look, in this day and age, if they're new to road cycling, just put them on a disc brake bike. You future-proof that gentleman. He's already used to disc brakes on his mountain bike, or anyone else that maybe has a gravel bike and now moves over to road cycling. Just put them on a disc brake bike. They're more widely available. For me to build a bike like this for someone who is a brand new roadie, it's really tough to get rim brake componentry. The microshift stuff that I looked at on the young athlete who has a really, really cool disc brake mechanical bike, that might work. The microshift, it's kind of the same philosophy of the Campagnolo thumb lever and then the big lever. But unless you already have a group set or you have a frame where you can strip a group set from, it's very, very challenging in 2025, November of 2025, to build someone a rim brake bike. So the Ritchey Road Logic is a bike that most people come to after they've had 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 bikes, and they realize, sometimes I just want a bike with a simple braking system, no batteries, no electronics, and I want external cables and housing, because all my other bikes are internal and there's these aero handlebars and all this. I just want a very basic and reliable bike again. And so the Ritchey Road Logic fits that bill. You've got your external cables and housing. You've got an independent, well, you could put a different handlebar on, but I strongly recommend just an independent bar and stem. You've got a 27-2 seat post. Perfect. I mean, I don't think those will ever stop being produced. You have a threaded bottom bracket. Oh, and by the way, with the Praxis crankset, it is a 30 millimeter spindle, but they make a proprietary crank bottom bracket where it threads into a 68 BB shell, 68 millimeter BB shell, and then you can put that 30 millimeter spindle. Now, I'm not a huge fan of 30 millimeter spindles because then your bearings are really small, but that's a topic for another day. But yeah, these bikes are the type of bike that people gravitate back to after they've had something else. And they're like, oh, I just want a simple bike. I can throw my leg over and go ride. Air up the tires, lube up the chain, and go ride. That's all there is to a bike like this. So I appreciate all of you who watched. I said it was going to be a quick video, but if you've been watching my channel for a long time, you know my videos are not short. I'm not part of a TikTok generation. And I do like to develop ideas and flesh them out throughout. All right, well, that is all for today. Please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you'll see when this bike is finished. And I will do a bike profile video once it's finished. And we will see you up the road.